All right, let's go. Good morning. Mr. Benton, will you open us, please? What? For the wall, remember, brevity is important. How long have you been here, guys?
Oh, about 20 minutes.
You're next. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 1, the third resolution, down 3 anyway. It is urging the State Board of Education and the State Department of Education to have a successful completion of a Skills for Success financial literacy class and for other reasons. Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions,
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Efstration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Second page, HB 938 and 939, modified open rule. Mr. Chairman, HB 938 would create a nonpartisan office of Chief Magistrate in Gwinnett County, a local legislation supported by all 10 Superior Court judges and 6 state court judges in Gwinnett, and importance is independent judiciary, and would ask the committee for favorable approval.
Any questions? Next one.
HB 939, just below, is for nonpartisan office of probate judge, independent judiciary, and the importance of electing all judges on the same ballot. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Any questions? Got a question? What is it? The leader.
Yes, sir.
Does your whole elected delegation from Gwinnett County support these matters as well?
The bill is co-sponsored by a majority of the delegation, and I don't believe that the entire delegation is supportive of it, or in fact, I can say the entire delegation doesn't support it, but a majority does.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Battles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I come again with House Bill 292, which is the Magistrate Court Judge's retirement change. Ask for your favorable consent.
No questions. Thank you. Wait, no. Mr. McCall.
Oh, okay. I thought
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 904 is the top of the second page. All this does is create a start date for appeals. It was about a 20-page bill last year, and now it's about 9 words. Through negotiations with EPD and agreements which is kind of how I think we ought to do stuff around here and don't have a whole lot of bills. But all it does is create a start date of July 1st of this year that allows people to be able to appeal a listing on a hazardous site index. It's not retroactive. If it's on now June the 30th, then you can't appeal it.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two measures on the bottom of page 3 under structured rule. The first, House Bill 412, is a permissive bill, allows electronic property tax billing.
Okay. Second one
is on the bottom of page 3, House Bill 900. It exempts consumables in manufacturing, the last item in the integrated manufacturing plan. There's no fiscal impact to the state.
Do that one again.
House Bill 900, the very last bill, page 3.
Okay. I don't have, the reason I ask, I don't have very much information on that one.
It arrived in your office at 5:45 yesterday afternoon, and I called your aide by the wrong name, so it's probably, the information's probably been deleted from your packet.
That sounds like a day 41 bill after all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I bring to you HB 495. That's the sub LC 400518S. It's modified structured rule, page 2. HB 495. No problem. Thank you. This bill allows for the State Properties Commission, chaired by the governor and including members appointed by the Speaker of the House, Lieutenant Governor, to approve conveyances of real property valued at $500,000 or less. What basically we're doing here is speeding up a process that takes 520 to 580 days to sell a piece of property that sits, has nothing going on with it, and pretty much most investors are not really wanting to spend that time. This will drop it down to about 120 days to sell the property. In here, it's one appraisal under $100,000, two appraisals for over $100,000 up to $500,000. We still have veto power if it's in your district and you do not like the property that we're trying to sell. All you have to do is write just a little note saying I'm against it, vetoed it, brings it back to the legislature.
Mr. Benton. No, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering if you would entertain a motion that any member that asks for a bill that doesn't tell us which page it's on and which rule it's under before giving us the bill number, that they go to the back of the line.
You know I don't want this committee to be run like it is over in the Senate.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Green.
It's not the bill that Calvin Hill worked so
Yes,
hard
sir.
on and did so much work on for the committee.
Yes, sir.
And that you're carrying it for him.
Yes, sir, it
Thank
is.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of the other side of the building, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I would direct your attention about halfway down the second page under modified open rule to Senate Bill 209. This bill clarifies that consumers have a legal right to download legal forms and documents as long as it's conspicuously stated that this is not a substitute for legal advice.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If you would look at the first page, second from the bottom, under Modified Open Rule HB 886. This is a very simple bill. Under current law, we require all local governments and political subdivisions to hold public hearings before they can pass a budget, except for local school districts and charter schools. So this would require that all local school districts and charter schools in the state of Georgia hold 2 public hearings before they pass a budget and make their budgets available online.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Maxwell. You want to bring your 26 bills?
I figured if you could get here on time, it'd be last, right?
For the wall, chairmen do get to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I got 3 little propositions on here. House Bill 601, first page, about halfway down. That's a judge of probate court. What we're asking to do there is allow the funds actuaries to determine when they have the money in place to do a COLA. Right now they get an automatic 3% per year, and they actuarially can't afford to do that. So we're asking them to go back and the board of directors have asked for this legislation so they can try to keep the funding in place for their probate court's retirement fund. So it'll be an ad hoc COLA at the discretion of the board and the actuaries.
Any
House
questions?
Bill 601.
Any questions? Next one.
Down below that, House Bill 764. A little more complicated. This is for our GSEP program, the program we started in 2009 for our new employees coming into the retirement system, ERS employees. We split it to a defined benefit, defined contribution. They come in at a 1% default right now, and we give them 90 days to raise it to 5% where they can get the 3% match. They're staying at 1%. So what we're asking to change is the default. They come in at 5. Hopefully we'll get more people staying at the 5% so they can get the 3% match. You're not going to be able to live on a retirement if you're only putting in 1%. That's just not going to happen. And this will be for new employees going forward after July the 1st of 2014. Anybody in there now can raise it up, but we're hoping if they come in at a higher rate, they'll be more inclined to keep it there.
Any questions? Next one.
Next one is House Bill 974 on the back, on the second page. It's a peace officers annuity benefit bill. We've got people buying into the peace officers annuity benefit fund right now on lines 14, 15, and 16. They're paying $20 per month for service plus 10% interest. Like all the other buy-ins that we're asking now, we want people to pay the full actuarial cost.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would appreciate y'all's support.
Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, page 3 under structured rule, House Bill 153. This bill allows for counties, if they choose, it's an option, to propose a SPLOST rate at less than 1%. Any SPLOST less than 1% must be signed off in an IGA, intergovernmental agreement, with every one of the municipalities in the county. And thirdly, counties can enact a SPLOST beginning 45 days after certification of the vote.
Any questions? Next, you got any other?
That's it.
Mr. Taylor.
Page 3, about halfway down, House Resolution 486. It's H.R. 486. Is a constitutional amendment that repeals, in a limited way, a 1945 constitutional amendment that prohibited the further formation of municipal school systems.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. On page 3 under modified structured, House Bill 891, close to the top, 891. Mr. Chairman, this is the bill that would allow a cost-saving measure per the request of our cities to allow them to have early voting for 1 week.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here today to ask for, on page 3 under structured rule, House Bill 816 is the next to the last bill on the blue sheet on page 3. And this bill would eliminate the sales tax on postage by correcting the definition of the word delivery charges. This comes suggested language by the Department of Revenue.
Questions? Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, page 3, modified structured, halfway down, HB 957, Georgia Brownfields Act. This bill would expand upon the very successful brownfield legislation that already exists on the books, which allows subsequent owners or leasehold interest holders to take polluted properties and develop those without incurring the liability that accrues to the previous owners. Fully supported by EPD.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Teasley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Have a bill 920, which is on the second one on page 2, under modified open. This is the Unclaimed Life Insurance Benefits Act. It would past companies who had been dealing in life insurance and annuities. Some had been using the death master file by the Social Security Administration asymmetrically, and this would require, moving forward, all companies would be using that in a symmetric way.
No questions. Thank you. Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. First page, 490, House Bill 490. This is the libraries bill brought to you last year. Worked over on it during the summer this year. All libraries are in support of this bill.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Epps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I bring to you House Bill 763 by substitute. It's on the first page, the first bill, sorry. This bill will allow Georgia Military College to establish a Bachelor of Applied Science degree program which will assist not only their graduates, but graduates of institutions under the Technical College System of Georgia in the attainment of a 4-year bachelor's degree. There is provision to this so that no branch of Georgia Military College will offer a Bachelor of Applied Science degree program that is currently being offered by an institution of the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia, which is located in the same county as that branch of Georgia Military College. This moves us towards our initiative of Complete College Georgia by the governor. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 778, page 1, 2/3 of the way down, modified open. This bill makes it easier to donate food to nonprofits by allowing donor liability only in the cases of gross negligence. If one were to follow the current letter of the law, any food donated to a charity such as the Ronald McDonald House would have to be prepared in a commercial kitchen. which is, of course, impractical if you're a family wanting to donate a meal to families with sick children in the hospital. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Dudgeon is bringing his 600-page bill.
Just for you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call to you attention on top of page 3, House Bill 897 under modified structure. It is a long bill. It encompasses a lot of different items under Title 20 in education policy. It's been worked on for a couple months. We got input from all members of the education community, from the charters to the public schools to the activists, and everybody made over 30 changes, and we seem to have a bill that almost everyone is happy with. I won't go through the whole thing, but some highlights. It clarifies that local school boards have control of their curriculum. It codifies a couple of governor's executive orders around the governor's office of student achievement. It sets minimum standards for charter authorizers. It also clarifies some technical funding issues that have already been funded that way by the governor in the 15 budget. And I would be glad to answer any questions. Well, I will point out that I did, Mr. Chairman, in respect for your time, try to put all of my stuff into one bill.
Yeah, but it's too long to read. Any questions? Good bill. Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On page 3, middle of the page, under modified structured, House Bill 910, which really creates just a recognition provision for medical legal partnerships here in Georgia. Medical legal partnerships are entities that are already existing in our state now. This would create a recognition provision under the Department of Community Health if certain medical legal partnerships want to apply for this recognition. It's important for them because these MLPs are funded through private donations, and they have the ability with this recognition to go back to their private donors and show them that they've reached that extra level of accreditation, if you will, for the good work they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I bring before you two bills. The first one's on page 1, modified open rule. Fourth one down, House Bill 566. This is actually a bill requested by a constituent. All it does is if a person is trying to get their car repaired for a failure of emission test, it allows the mechanic to test drive in servicing the vehicle to fix the emission test and not be subject to a traffic ticket for driving an expired tag because you couldn't get the emission test. That's all it does. The second bill is on the third page.
Wait a minute.
Mechanic. Yes, the mechanic, not the driver of the car. Yes.
Nick, this has already got conversation and I ain't done nothing with it yet. Next one.
Next one's on page 3 under modified structured. It's the seventh one down, House Bill 898. It's the Interstate Compact for Juveniles. This is a department bill. Department of Juvenile Justice requests that we pass this law in order for Georgia to join the Interstate Compact. We are the only state out of the 50 contiguous U.S. states that's not part of the compact.
Questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you today 3 bills. The first bill on page 1 under modified open is House Bill 761. House Bill 761 is to change Public Retirement System Standards law to provide a reference date to Governmental Accounting Standard Board Statements 25 and 27, which is for financial reporting requirements for retirement systems.
Questions? Next one.
The next one is on page 3, House Bill 843, second one from the top. This is also a retirement bill. This is to provide changes to the public retirement laws to be compliant with IRS regulations according to a letter of determination ruling from the Internal Revenue Service.
Questions? No questions. Thank you.
The last bill is also on page 3, House Bill 908. This is a bill to extend the tire collection fee for the Solid Waste Trust Fund from June 2014 to June 2019.
There is questions. Last year, Mr. Powell introduced a bill that said once we got monies for all these special little fees that we put on, that once we've got the money or we haven't spent the money, that fee went away. What are we doing with the money on this one? How much is in the pot? And just where is it being used?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the FY 2015 budget that we approved earlier this week, it'll be $2.7 million of the fees will be appropriated for the purposes of the Solid Waste Trust Fund.
How many fees do we bring with it?
Over in the past few years, we've generated roughly $6 million per year. It is clearly a trend that we're increasing the amount that has been collected to be fully appropriated. This is a step in the right direction with an additional $855,000 included in the FY 2015 budget.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Albers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring a prop today for you and your committee. Originally, I was going to use the senator from Dunwoody as my prop, but several of you advised it against based on his tenure in the House. On page 3, modified...
Any questions? Go ahead.
Senate Bill 207, page 3, modified structure rule. I bring my fire helmet today because my fellow firefighters know that these 4 words will surely help out our senior citizens and those with in-home health care, and they want to be there for them in their time of need, but hopefully nothing that happened to them by the bad guys. So I'd ask for your favorable passage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Fran.
Always good to see you, any time of the day.
You know, after today, you don't have to come back till the 30th day.
I know that, sir. Page 2, SB 128, defining for marriage and family therapists, again, to let them diagnose so that they can get paid. And Chairman Maxwell is carrying the bill.
Good bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Have a good day.
Ms. Jones.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I present for your consideration HB 833, open rule, top of the first page. This bill will change the definition of the word slum in the Georgia Code to the term of art blight. It is well-researched, bipartisan bill, and is supported by the cities to help them get federal funding. As for your consideration.
Mr. Roberts.
Just one question. Is there a companion bill going through the Senate with the same language in it?
There is, and that bill has pockets of blight as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The gentleman back here in the left-hand corner that's watching intently as his father struggles. What's his name? Caleb? You want to present these bills, you got a lot better chance than your daddy does.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, I have 2 House bills there for consideration of the Rules Committee. HB 674 And HB 802, 674 is a funding bill for the juvenile court system, public defenders, and district attorneys. HB 802 is a companion bill to an amendment to the E-SPLOST provision, and that amendment is on page 3. It's HR 1109, which would amend the E-SPLOST provisions to allow for 50% of it to be used for E-SPLOST, 50% up to 50% of it to be used for educational purposes, programs, and materials.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask for two bills. HB 804, that's the bill that we've already discussed regarding raising the age in which judges will have the discretion to allow the child to testify remotely in cases of physical or sexual abuse.
Any questions? What's the other one?
The second bill is HB 973, which will amend the Medicaid False Claims Act, which has been a very successful program in Georgia. So far, we've recouped approximately $60 million from folks who have defrauded our Georgia taxpayers. And this will simply keep us in sync with the feds and allow for an additional 10% bump when we're working with them on recouping fraudulent claims.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Golub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified structured House Bill 863, this is the bill that strengthens our animal cruelty laws. I just want to make sure that it's clear that it doesn't take any otherwise legal conduct and bring it into an area that would make it criminal. I had a good conversation with some members of the committee yesterday to make that clear. I'm not sure I was as clear as I should have been yesterday about that, but just want to be clear today that it does not take otherwise legal conduct and bring it into the criminal realm. There is no opposition to the bill that's expressed at this time. I don't think there is any, either on the governmental side or on the private side. Thank you.
Mr. Benton. Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Top of the third page, HB 826, modified structured. This bill gives school boards power over controlling knives and such objects on their campuses. Current state of the law, if an administrator finds a pocket knife in a glove box in a car, they have no option but to send someone to jail. It's a common sense bill, Mr. Chairman.
I agree. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The author is unfortunately not able to be here today at this point because of power failures and trees in the road, the storm last night in North Georgia, but I bring to you on page 2, under modified open, the top, House Bill 947 came out of Industry and Labor Committee unanimously, simply codifies some debit card language and then also allows debit cards to be used in lieu of payroll checks.
What happens if you lose that card?
You get a new one, just like with your current debit card or credit cards under the same provisions of that. You also receive...
How do you explain the loss?
I'm sorry?
Never mind. I'm sorry. Y'all hadn't got time for my questions. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by House Bill 495 by Representative Donahue.
Where is it? Okay.
cigarettes and vapor cigarettes. We're including those into the section of what's prohibited minors. That would be basically afforded by everybody that's retail and manufacturing. We try to do the right thing.
Next one.
Next one, same page 2, modified structure. That's the first of 2 public safety bills. That's the annual Department of Public Safety's housekeeping bill.
Which one?
State regulations.
What's the number?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, 753. That puts the state regulations in sync with the federal regulations. After the ice storm, it added some language. Dealing with during times of storm, emergency situation type trucks, and change the alternative equipment available.
Next one.
And the next one's on page 3, modified structure, House Bill 878. The towing operators in the state, they do a lot of towing, not what's called non-essential mode. Public safety issue, picking up abandoned vehicles, derelicts, and things like that. Most of these towing operations are recovering about 40 cents on the dollar for the investment of storage or holding. It sets up an auction process so they can charge their fees. And then in the current process, when they're auctioned off, they can split the
Questions? Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, on the 3rd page, modified structured, about halfway down, the House Bill 899. This is about unlicensed personal care homes. It makes owning one a felony, and the judges have a chance to reduce that charge if they want to, but these are exploiting our elderlies, and the prosecuting attorneys were in favor of it. Thank you.
Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 898. That's the interstate compact, which would allow Georgia and the other 49 states that are members of this compact to share information regarding juveniles who are bad actors and have been in trouble in other states, and if they've been involved in, there have been bad actors here, we could share that information when that juvenile goes to another state. Georgia's the only state that's not a member of this compact. It's a good bill, and it would help us a lot in being able to watch these bad actors as they come to Georgia. We just don't have a provision for doing that for juveniles. Also, House Bill 674.
Wait a second. Personal jokes up here. Ms. Dempsey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put my name by House Bill 910, Representative Kelly's request to authorize the medical legal partnerships.
Ms. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to place my name by 495 and 833. 833 is the bill that will change the slum designation to use as blighted. I've had experience with that, and I would really prefer to be known as a blighted area rather than a slum city. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a clarification question on HB 899. My question was, the definition of a personal care home, have a cousin who resigned from teaching to take care of a mother-in-law and an aunt. That's 2 people. What do we classify as personal care homes?
I will ask you to get with the author, and y'all come back and tell me what that is. Okay. Y'all, this is the 26th day. We ain't got many days, and my little white stack keeps growing. So get ready. We might as well get started. For Monday, under open rule, HB 763. Any opposed? Under open rule, HR 1186. Any opposition? It's on modified open, HB 292. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 490. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 763, I 64. Do I hear move? Any opposition? Under modified open, HB 778. So modified open, HB 904. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 920. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 251. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 495. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 843. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 863. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 898. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 910. Any opposition? Modified structure, HB 973. Any opposition? Under structured, HB 816. Under modified structure, HB 753. Here, move. That's going to be the calendar, but we have one other that if she would like to, she's more than welcome to come. Ms. Underman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I was late. I was with the Lieutenant Governor.
That's not an excuse.
It's not a very valid excuse.
Not a very good one, anyway.
I know that. I know that. And I know where I came from, and I know my roots over here. Mr. Chairman, I know that you're probably not doing Senate bills because we're getting so close to crossover day, but I did want to reference the Alzheimer's bills, Senate Bill 291 and Senate Bill 292, that both of your chairmen are carrying. And when you do get to the Senate bills, I just would appreciate you looking at those very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The way I've got it figured, if y'all want out of here Monday at any kind of decent hour, I would keep my comments early on in the session to 0, and that's 17 bills. Bye.